Record. Okay, welcome to the another episode of the Domus Search Leadership Podcast, where I speak with leaders in industry across pharmaceutical, life sciences, medical device technology and biotech. And Domus Search, for those uninitiated, are an executive search business operating in these industries across Europe. And this is my way of giving back and sharing knowledge from the inside with leaders in industry. I'm delighted to be joined today by Sanjeet Telang, who is the Chief Business Officer at IDEOGEN, who I'm actually going to let you do more of an intro on IDEOGEN, because I think in some ways, for the uninitiated, using that word again, it's quite a complex business, but I'm sure it's very simple to describe. And yes, I'm going to hand over the floor. Welcome to the show today.
Great. Thank you very much, Matt. And delighted to be here. So like you said, I think, it is a complex business to be in, but, my mantra has always been to keep things simple. Yeah. And, IDEOGEN, to keep it, very simple, is a disease management and commercialization platform that is focused on rare and orphan diseases, specifically in the areas of oncology, hematology, virology, and cardiology, just to name a few. Yeah. And by that, what I mean is we play in the fields of managed access programs where drugs or products in the healthcare industry are not really registered, but are close to approval for one reason or another, but yet address a certain unmet medical need in specific markets. And we take those products all the way across the value chain, from unregistered all the way to registered sales in those specific markets, and commercialize them with with the intention, the end objective of making these products relevant and accessible to the patients that need them.
Wonderful. So that's a great intro.
Yeah, that's what we do in a nutshell.
Fantastic. And for those who follow the podcast, the many millions out there, I jest. I interviewed Merck as well, as a colleague of yours, Chief Commercial Officer, member of the board like yourself as well, from a slightly different feel, and we had a slightly different conversation. And having worked across Europe now for a number of years as well, I'm often hearing about companies struggling to find the right people, but IDEOGEN seem to be hiring great people, and they've snapped you up. Your career is extremely impressive. I could go through your CV as well. But how did IDEOGEN find you? Is it a long-standing relationship? And how did it all come about, and that you joining the business fairly recently?
Sure. Look, I think it's a small world. The pharma industry actually is a very small world. Everyone knows everyone. It almost gets incestuous at times. But you do come across people at various points in your career and in your life. And when I moved back to Switzerland after a variety of travels all over the world, I connected with the chairman and founder of the company, Dr. Turgan Gokar. And in 2019, when I was with Lonza, and we stayed in contact, and we just kept up a dialogue over the last couple of years. And then obviously COVID hit. Yeah. I went through a transition in my career, and when we reestablished contact in late 2021, that's when we realized that there was a potential need for IDEOGEN to take the next step in its evolution. Wonderful. And I was available to obviously offer my expertise and my services, and the two things just worked really well. Right. What I would like to say is that for IDEOGEN, it's me working at IDEOGEN, it's more a question of chemistry with the people, with the the mindset that they bring, which is essentially innovation, a certain amount of agility in terms of decision making, a nimbleness, and most importantly, a very open mind to accept new ideas and change.
So important, isn't it? And just a couple of lessons that I've just taken out of that as well is, one is to always keep networking as well, keeping your option and your mind open. Often the times I say to a lot of senior executives, you often need to be your own recruiter. Obviously I come in at the distressed level where the search has been exhausted, but I think it's a really good lesson to keep keep open mind for the long term, 2-3 years, it's not a long time. Start making those right connections now, and you never know where it's going to come at the right time, which is wonderful. And something that IDEOGEN and you've been doing throughout your career as well is disruption within industries and change. So I imagine coming in as the Chief Business Officer now, you're seeing a lot of opportunity to disrupt old markets potentially and challenge and find new ways through. And I was really interested to ask, maybe as a tailor to that as well, what does it mean being a Chief Business Officer now within IDEOGEN and also industry as well? What does that mean?
Look, the Chief Business Officer, as most people know, it's not really a standard title, right? It's it's something that's been put together. But what it is, what it actually means is that you have an overall view on the business and just about every aspect of the business. You're not pigeonholed in one function or another. Okay. So therefore, my role at IDEOGEN is essentially, corporate development on the one hand. So to give the company an objective, a vision, and then build a roadmap to try and achieve that objective within a certain time frame. Ensure that we put guardrails in place, to make sure that we reach our milestones that we set from year 1 through year 3 through year 5. Whatever the time is to reach that end objective. That's number one. Number two, it's to institutionalize the business. Put governance in place, put processes in place, make sure that everything runs the way it's supposed to. So that it's almost like a toolbox, that you actually build and you deploy. So it becomes a plug and play model. Because one image that I'd like to, I always like to share in organizations that are at this stage, and it's something I shared with you, is basically that of a plane. So I always consider us to be a plane that we are building as we're flying at the same time.
I love that image. Maybe I'll share that on the share a link to it on
the and as we go through our course, as we chart our course, it becomes more and more tangible. And I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. It's a live show.
There's a pop-up window.
That's okay.
It becomes more and more tangible, and the aircraft comes together, and we accelerate on our course.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's a really good analogy, isn't it? And it could go either ways. But I guess bringing you on as well is bringing on another capable pair of hands to build that plane and take it to the next stage. So in a very mature industry that you're operating in as well, how do you disrupt and how do you make change within the organization? Obviously, I appreciate making change within the organization is probably easier than making change within the industry as well. What steps can you take really to start to make a dent in the industry?
Look, I think we need to manage our expectations, right? We can't really bite more than we can chew. To be honest, I think we need to be focused, take baby steps, and in our case, it's finding that sweet spot essentially of meeting an unmet medical need. I mean, Dr. Gokar said something to me, when I met him, 2.5 years ago, when he said that, we are a pharma company. That's great. We are obviously in the business of selling medicines, making a profit, but in the end, it's about the patient. And when you play in a sweet spot where you're looking at fulfilling an unmet medical need through specialty care services, where you're looking at a managed access program or a named patient program, where you've got patients that are typically going through a very hard time in their lives, going through transplants or, in a salvage care setting or in a compassionate use setting. And you can come in and actually, be able to provide that solution within a very tangible period of time. It's literally 24 hours to 48 hours from the placing of the order to the fulfillment of the order, through our infrastructure. I think that is it's a very clear and tangible end objective to be able to fulfill. Now, when you actually expand that, in a business setting, it's essentially that provides you with all the tools that you need in order to be able to build and run the business. And that's the sweet spot that we're in. We're essentially a disease management, as I said, and a commercialization platform. So we manage the disease end to end, from the identification of the patient to assessing what is the solution that the patient needs, to delivering the solution. And in doing so, we actually commercialize the product, to make sure that the patient gets it at the end. So
fantastic, really exciting. And what speaking about exciting, what's exciting you about your part of the industry at the moment? Are there any upcoming innovations, or is it more how do we do what we're doing better?
Well, at this stage, I would say we're in a growth phase. We are not a startup company anymore. That's a term that we've retired, some time ago. Yeah. And we had a 2-day strategy and team building session where I made it a point to get agreement, alignment from everyone in management and leadership that that we're no longer a startup company. We're a fast growing company. We're small, but we're growing very fast. And yes. And the idea is to consolidate and strengthen our position in such a way that we become the partner of choice in the area of addressing unmet medical needs. So our mantra is pharma at the speed of life. Because patients only have a finite amount of time.
Yes.
Which is why they're actually patients, which is why they need the solutions that we can offer. And the sooner we can identify what the solutions are, and then actually provide those solutions to the patient in a timely fashion. Yeah, I think that's super critical.
That's a great strap line as well. And I think traditionally, is it fair to say that bringing new drugs to the market or therapeutic areas is quite a slow process in general? So that I think that's there's a bit of disruption in itself, isn't it? Really identifying the link between, okay, here's the problem in real time. How do we fix it quicker?
Yeah, absolutely. We are not in the drug development space. We don't have any tangible plans to be in there, at least in the short to medium term. Yeah. But that being said, we identify assets that are obviously at a late stage or even on the market, but not in the markets that we operate in. Yeah. And thanks to our partners with whom we have some very strong and value-added relationships, we actually bring those assets on board and then make them available to the broader society.
That's really exciting. And you're based in Switzerland, which is obviously a great hub for pharma and life sciences, and technologies booming out of universities as well. Something that we discussed briefly earlier on as well in terms of internationalizing organizations, and from some of the conversations that I've had over the last 6 months, more and more European-based organizations are looking at ways how they can access new markets, how they can work better with the US and Asia, for example. How have you found that? Because you've been very international throughout your career, working with some huge businesses such as Lonza and Sanofi as well. How did you find, maybe a better question is, what are the lessons that you learned from those organizations that you can bring into a smaller organization? And I'm thinking about other C-suite executives and senior directors who are pushing through and want to help take their business across wider markets as well. Is there any advice that you could share there, or lessons learned that you found are coming in handy nowadays?
Look, I think the one word that has been my strapline throughout my career, I think, is adaptability. You don't really go in with a one-size-fits-all mindset. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I have worked obviously in blue chip multi-billion-dollar organizations throughout my career. But what attracted me to IDEOGEN is the fact that it's a company that has a clear objective, it has a clear mission. It's growing, but most importantly, it wants to make a difference in the space in which it operates. Yeah. And to be part of that change, as I mentioned to you earlier, to being a change agent, and be part of that growth story is something that attracted me to it right from the start. Because over here, you're actually making a tangible difference to people's lives in real time. It's not something, it's not a legacy that you look back on 10, 15 years from now. You actually see it happening. And I mean, we get orders from hospitals all over Europe for the products that we have, with the names of the patients that actually need this. And, we know exactly what line of therapy that patient is in, what line of therapy the patient is going to, and, what the effect is, of the therapy on that patient. So, so for me, it's really a question of adaptability. I mean, you can either go into a big organization, be settled, and have your salary be one among millions,
thousands,
and
millions.
and there's nothing wrong with that. That's the way you want to fly. But I've done that, and over here, I think I'm really making a much bigger difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess connection as well. The larger the organization, often the case, there's a lot less connection with the top. And it's quite hard.
Yes, well,
it sounds like you all have a very close relationship and are able to work in an agile manner to get things done.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Look, we are a flat organization. We don't want to layer ourselves up in any way. We have, it's a privately owned, family owned organization, but we do treat the organization as a family as well. We do run the organization obviously extremely professionally, but at the same time, there is a lot of respect, obviously, with each other, among each other.
Yeah.
And there's a code that we follow, and which is why we're successful the way we are. So
obviously, you personally have the patient in mind in everything you do as well, and that it sounds like that drives a lot of the decision making as well. But as a leader as well, and as you evolve, how do you make sure that you stay ahead of the curve and can see a few years down the line? I'm always interested to learn how you keep your edge personally, and how you're able to steer and advise. Is it through just constantly listening and being aware, or is there something else that you feel would be beneficial for others who are progressing into the C-suite to maybe know?
Look, it's actually intellectual curiosity. You have to always ask questions. You have to challenge the status quo. The moment you actually fall back on that and just accept things for the way they are is when you stop growing.
Yeah.
By challenging the status quo, I don't mean just asking questions for the sake of asking questions. It's actually analyzing the situation, being constructive about it. But on a more tangible level, it's actually being out there in the market, attending conferences, partnering conferences, going out in the market and building relationships with investors, be they private equity, be they people like yourself, banks, other pharma companies, and just understanding exactly which way the wind is blowing, what are some of the potential partners out there. What are they looking for? Because you have a ton of companies, for example, that are based in the US that have very little knowledge of the European and Asian markets. But they would like to obviously extend their reach to this part of the world. And when you connect with these people, you realize the gap in in learning experience that they have, and you can actually help bring them to this part of the world, and bring their value-added services to this part of the world. And,
I guess it's a great segue, isn't it? Or the European hub for the US for Asia is a very good middle point, which is wonderful. No, that's really, really helpful. And something we touched on as well that I'm really interested in, because as you mentioned early on in the podcast as well about the industry being extremely small, and I see through the day-to-day work that I do how connected these industries are and where people are moving. And you say, and I look at various connections within the industry, and they all seem to be connected to the same people. I'm really interested to know, as the industry grows as well, how open it is to change in terms of not necessarily a change of guard, but introducing other skill sets, mindsets, and diverse thoughts from other industries as well. And what industries maybe you see as well aligned or well positioned. One industry that I used to operate in was the semiconductor industry and microelectronics, and I could see through companies like Medtronic and Carl Zeiss that they can be very closely aligned as well. Have you seen that? Do you think that's a good way to go for organizations if they're struggling to compete with the salaries of Merck and Novartis and these guys, do you think that leaders need to be more agile in their thinking in order to attract the next generation of talent to their organizations?
I absolutely do. I'd say 15 to 20 years ago, I think the healthcare industry was extremely insular, and it was a very prescribed set of competencies, either a science degree or a medical degree, followed by X number of years out in the field, followed by some time in the office, with an MBA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That has evolved. When I was in Boehringer Ingelheim in the consumer healthcare business, for example, we had, I worked with some very, very talented people there, and in our region, we had a head of sales that was extremely resourceful, and he came up with the idea of actually looking at people that came from the consumer industry, from the consumer goods industry, and we actually ended up hiring people that worked in Duracell.
Yeah,
and because they had that consumer mindset, and what they brought with them is not the fact that we were approaching doctors, but we were approaching consumers who were our end consumers, essentially, with the patients. So to have this kind of a mindset, I think, and this change of a mindset is super important. And for us, at IDEOGEN, I mean, we're constantly looking to enrich, our pipeline, our human resource pipeline, essentially, with new thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at companies like Reckitt Benckiser and Johnson & Johnson, who have these very strong consumer businesses, but also very involved in pharma as well, which is
in healthcare, exactly.
And I guess it's just, if we think of where you are and where the consumer is, if somebody's selling right here to the consumer, it just makes sense. And I think that gives people a bit of hope, because I see a lot of, when I look across the industry, I see some extremely impressive CVs at the top level. And I might have mentioned it earlier on that somebody might feel intimidated to think, well, actually, if I'm not a biochemist, or I don't have a PhD or a chemistry background, how can I talk, really succinctly and articulately about the right topics as well. But I think you touched on something really interesting there, that the commercial space, the sales side, really, if you've got a good salesperson who understands how to get product to end user.
Yeah, no, I think in the end, if you block out all the noise, and and you focus on what the objective is, and the objective is essentially acquiring a new patient and making sure that the patient actually gets that gets the therapy that he or she needs. I think that is that itself becomes a process, and that's a means to an end. And then everything else can always be taught.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking back, obviously, you have that background as well, and you have the benefit of having that background. If looking back as well in your position now, how important do you think that was, having those foundations, that biochemistry background as well, within your career?
I won't lie. I mean, it definitely went a very long way. It definitely went a very long way. I mean, I'm a pharmacist by training. I have a bachelor's degree in pharmacy. I have a master's degree in BioPharmaceutics. It certainly goes a long way, because you understand the terms, much easier than if you didn't have it. Obviously your learning curve is less steep, and you negotiate the intricacies of the business much easier. But then I've you look at Murad, for example, who's not a scientist, but
retail, and it's a really interesting market.
He's international law actually is.
That was that's right.
And but when he speaks science, I mean, he can hold it with the best of them. And,
absolutely,
it's incredible. So that's
really great.
The kind of spectrum we have.
Really diverse board there. I'm really impressed, actually. And peeling the onion back even further as well to those youngsters, I say now I've turned 40, I say the kids at 18, 19, 20 who are looking at healthcare as well and wanting to make a difference. And as we probably know through COVID, there's been a real shift and change in working style and patterns. And I think people look at pharma and healthcare industries as something very different to what it used to stereotypically be, big pharma this, big pharma that, and so on. But for those who want to come through, but not necessarily having the university degree as well behind them, is there a path for them? Do you see that? And has IDEOGEN opened up that avenue yet is it even necessary for you to hire? I don't even know what generation it is now. Is it Gen Z? I think I'm running out of letters.
Yeah, look, I think we've come to the end of the alphabet, so I think we start.
Start again.
Started the Gen A. But look, I mean, we are constantly looking out for for disruptors. We're looking at new thought. I mean, we've recently hired a financial operations resource, a financial operations manager who comes from the flavors and the fragrance industry.
Wonderful.
And so he doesn't really have much of a background in pharma or healthcare.
Right.
But he was extremely impressed with our mission, with the objective and the idea with what we do. And I think the only advice that I can give the new generation is to do your research about what kind of companies you want to work at, what's the sector you want to work at, because if I mean, I'm only I'm not even 50, but but when I was their age, I didn't have the access to the information that they do now.
Wasn't as widely available, was it? Not as much internet. I mean, even at 40, I can say, as a teenager, I didn't have a computer at home. I didn't have a mobile phone.
Exactly.
Very different.
Now they have information at their fingertips, so you can actually leverage that to the maximum. To be able to get as much information as possible and make an informed decision about what you'd like to do and where you'd like to do it and how you'd like to do it. Absolutely. And if you're clear in that, and if we see that you're clear about what you want to do, at least up to a certain point, then we're extremely, extremely excited to have you on board.
Wonderful. That's a really exciting message. And just as we close things out as well, Sanjeet, as well, I appreciate you've been traveling a fair bit as well. And I'll make sure I share all the links to this episode and to you and IDEOGEN as well. What's next for you now as we kind of roll up to Christmas? I appreciate it's pedal on the metal. Are you traveling more? Where will people see you? And how's the best way to connect with you in the business?
Look, I was just at a major partnering conference in Leipzig, in Germany. It's called BioEurope. Okay. It's one of the flagship conferences that we have here in Europe. So obviously now from now till the end of the year, we focused on developing the budget, for 2023. But come 2023, obviously, we expect to be present in some of the major similar partnering conferences as well. So perhaps JP Morgan, the start of the year, and then the first edition of BioEurope in spring of next year. So
wonderful, exciting times.
Which will be in Basel, I think. Yeah, so certainly exciting.
Any plans to come to the UK, Sanjeet?
I'd love to, as long as
there's a good excuse.
As long as you can keep a single tenant at 10 Downing Street, sure, yes.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, mindful of your time as well. So I know you've got a busy day today, as we all have, I'm sure. But just keeping it within the schedule. It's been really, really great. I think we've all learned a lot here. I'm looking forward to taking this away, soaking it all in, and sharing some of the insights through the recording as well. And it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time and insights, Sanjeet. And I'm looking forward to
Thank you very much, man.
Further conversations. Have a wonderful weekend.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Sanjeet.
Bye-bye.
Speak soon.
Bye.